what we remember the most and how we are most impacted are those experiences in school that stick with us for a lifetime, because how we were allowed to imagine, explore, create, innovate, not just on the scholar side, but also on the instructional side.
You are responsible for so much. You're responsible for the teacher-child relationship, the teacher-parent relationship, for the atmosphere, for the energy. It's a lot. And from what I've read, you did such a great job.
Thank you.
And because of that, I really want to be able to touch on all areas, because I am a mother, right? And I had challenges in schools, and I had challenges with my children in school. So I want to, have this conversation about the parental concerns, about the child concerns, the teacher concerns, as well as, being over a school.
We figured out what works, how kids are successful, what things are in place throughout the school day to make a school successful. A school is successful when the teachers are successful, when the scholars are successful.
Now, I had challenges, and I won't go through all of these because I had several, but I had challenges with teachers not allowing my children to go to the restroom while they were in class. Now, I could understand if they were abusing this policy, okay? But I had to, eventually tell my children, like, if you have to go to the restroom, you go and you call me so that I'm aware, and then I can speak to the teacher, Now, what is your policy? What is it that you think are the yays and nays of the restroom policy? How do you see them?
That is also a good question. We believe success comes with confidence and belief in themselves, and no matter how hard the work is and how rigorous it is, if we prepare their mindset, they will be able to execute.
You have a motto that says, we need a school that looks like Disneyland but operates like Harvard.
Yes.
Tell us about that. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the KimUnity Soulutions Podcast, the only podcast that is inspiring humanity and leadership within and beyond the workplace. It is so good to be with you all. I have a special guest today. Yes, it's usually a solo podcast, but today I'm bringing in someone very, very special, Dr. Chakesha Scott. She is a nationally recognized education strategist. She is a charter school founder, not assistant principal, not superintendent, and bless you all that do. But she is a charter school founder and the CEO of EduStrategies LLC. She has led the development of over 40,000 square foot state-of-the-art public school facility that sits on 7 acres in Baker, Louisiana. And she founded Impact Charter School that has earned multiple recognitions for academic excellence, including top Gaines honors for outstanding scholar success in years 2016, 2018, 2021, 23, and 24. And multiple U.S. News and World Report recognitions as both Best Charter School and Best School in 2024 and 2025. I'm talking about phenomenal. She is a wife. She is a mother. As of today, Dr. Scott is also helping education entrepreneurs across the country launch and lead excellent schools that transforms communities. Last but not least, she is currently leading a national effort to protect and support single-site charter founders navigating systemic barriers to equity, autonomy, and long-term sustainability in public education. Welcome, Dr. Chakesha Scott. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I am well. Thank you so much for having me.
You are more than welcome. I am so thankful that we were able to get together today. So you all know, we met at a Good Soil Conference. And Good Soil Conference is basically a conference for entrepreneurs to gather, to learn, to find funding resources, and also to collaborate. So I'm thankful for Good Soil. I'm thankful for the opportunity for us to connect.
Absolutely likewise.
Yes, yes, yes. So now, when we met, we were actually sitting in the same session, and there was a young lady in between us. But as we started to talk, I realized, or we shared our what we do, and you told me that you were a charter school founder, and I was taken aback. I was thrown off. I wasn't ready to hear that because normally when I go to these networking conversations or networking experiences and conferences, I'm meeting more people who are in the fashion industry or they are innovative in the technology space. They're agents, they're in all other sectors, but never, never, never have I met a charter school founder. So I just want to let you know that it was a great surprise, and not because I was in disbelief, but I was more excited because I know that that is a full-time, all-encompassing position. So
Absolutely.
thank you. Yeah, so thank you so much for what you do. So can you please share with us how you even got started to become and decide that you wanted to be a founder of a charter school?
So that's a great question. Actually, we started actually as a nonprofit organization for educational services in 2009. So my background is actually accounting, business management, and I am married to an educator. So watching his work and just being inspired by his work back then, I saw where there were a lot of discrepancies in our educational system. Back then, under No Child Left Behind, there was a program called SES, or Supplemental Educational Services, where schools who were deemed AUS, which stands for Academically Unacceptable Schools, which means they've been struggling academically for years and years, what the federal government decided to do was launch a program where tutoring providers can offer tutoring services to the students after school, free of charge to the students. In order to be one of those SES providers, you had to be on the state approved list. So my husband was working for one, and he just saw where kids weren't being served well. And the more we talked about it and talked about the innovative strategies that could be put in place, which the company at that time that he was working for wasn't interested in necessarily changing their model. So that's when we started researching, looking into, well, how can we become one of those state approved providers to be able to be innovative and bring kids the instruction that we believe they needed to truly close those gaps. So that was a year and a half to 2 year long process with that application to apply to become one of those providers. And we were selected and we were able to start the work. So it was one of the most exciting things to be a part of, to the point to where I left my career in auditing and accounting to join that work full time. And we were so successful. We were one of the fastest growing SES providers with some of the highest academic performance results. That's when my imagination started to grow and expand to what if we could keep the students all day and provide instruction versus just after school? Just imagine the level of growth if we're doing this level of growth just after school. Just imagine what we can do if we had the kids all day, especially because we saw close up what was occurring in those school districts. The kids weren't being served well. They were sad. The teachers weren't coming to work all the time. So they didn't have consistency in the instruction. They didn't have their pacing was off because of that. And there weren't systems in place set up for those students to be successful. So back then, charter schools weren't as popular. However, they were around, particularly in other states. So that's when I started to look and research into that. How can we bring these innovative opportunities of charter schools to Baker, Louisiana? Back then, no charter schools existed in Baker, Louisiana. So I got serious about it, and we were the first organization to apply for a charter school in Baker, Louisiana. So although we weren't successful that first time we applied, we took the entire next year applying again because it's not a quick process. It does take about a year or so to build that application, to be able to thoroughly plan your school, engage the community, and making sure that you're meeting the needs of that specific community. That second time around, we were successfully approved. And then that's when the work started of the launch of Impact Charter School in 2014. And as of today, it's been in operation 11 years under my leadership. It's now in its 12th year operation.
Wonderful. That is beautiful. And I commend you so much for seeing a need and being the solution.
Thank
Because
you.
oftentimes we can see a problem and just complain or even move out of the area and not
Yes,
really address those or wait for somebody else to address it. So
absolutely.
so thank you for that. Thank you for that. And also, I understand the importance of tutoring and summer camps. And just so you know, so when I was growing up, so I live in Texas now. I'm originally from California. I grew up, born and raised in Los Angeles, and then we moved to a small city called Altaloma, California. And my school, so I know Impact Charter is a pre-K through 8th grade school, right?
Yeah.
And you have built this amazing state-of-the-art 40,000 square foot facility. My school was a house, if you can believe that. It was a house. We had kindergarten in one area. We had first and second in one room, third and fourth in another, and then fifth through eighth in another. And there were probably about 20, 22, 25 students in each room with those grades combined. And so it was normal to me. That environment was normal to me. And I remember the challenges with homework. With math in particular, I love numbers. I loved algebra, but when it got down to the right angles, the triangles, the Pythagorean theorem and all of that, I needed help. And I didn't go to a tutor. The school didn't have a tutor. It was a small scale private school. And so thankfully, my best friend's parents were engineers. And so I would be over at her house many nights going over problems and equations. So I understand the need for tutoring. I understand the need for free tutoring as well as summer camps because, what's the saying when the devil is busy and like if you're not doing anything, the kids get into trouble. Basically, I can't remember the saying.
The idol, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, is the devil's
Yes,
shop.
the idle mind is the
Yeah.
devil's playground.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. And so in my small school, and I'm glad we're having this conversation. I'm thankful that we met because I'm able to share my school experience to what you're doing. But in my summer camps, it was one of a kind. It was majority white. And on Tuesdays, we were ice skating. On Wednesdays, we were bowling. We had a gymnastics truck, if you could even think of it, that came up to the school and we would do gymnastics. So I totally understand like the enrichment programs that you were offering at Impact Charter
Yeah.
and Exposure, right?
Yeah. So
Exposure.
Education Explosion is the nonprofit that holds the contract for Impact Charter School. So Impact Charter School is just a program under Education Explosion. It's not its standalone entity. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you for
Hmm.
clarifying that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
So I thank you for your work. I totally understand. And from what I researched, you had over 450 students each year at your school. Is that correct?
Yes, on average, approximately 450 students. We started with grades K-3 that very first year, and we added a grade each year. We also added pre-K. At first, it was originally supposed to be only an elementary school, K through 5, but parents and kids were so invested by the time that first year third graders got to fifth grade that in 2 years they weren't ready to leave. They were like, no, we want to stay here for middle school. So we applied to the state for material amendment so that we can continue to service the kids that we were invested in because they weren't quite ready to leave just yet. And several of them stayed with us throughout their entire middle school year and experience and went off to high school. And we continue to stay in touch. They are doing amazing leaps and bounds. And they always remind me how Impact Charter School created a foundation for them that they will never forget. And every time the school would have events, even where they long gone, they use it as a reunion, a class reunion to travel back to just stay connected because their experience there was so well under my leadership.
That is beautiful and so relatable because, I don't know about your educational experience, but for me, I can remember all the details. I can remember my classmates' names. I can remember, we actually had pets at the school, and those years are formative. Those years you're not going to forget, so experience matters. And you said so much just then. I read that at the beginning of each day of class, you all actually have a moment of Harambe. Am I saying that correctly?
So Harambe, yes, that was our morning experience where in the beginning, it was at the beginning of the day, we will do an assembly where we pretty much set the tone for the day. So teachers and staff and the scholars will do cheers and chants, the motivational song. So it's a guided exercise for about 25, 30 minutes where it's about 2 to 3 different cheers and chants. They're all different each day, but it's saying the same thing as positive affirmations of, I know I'm going to have a good day. I can do whatever I set out to do. Everything is song, rhyme, and rhythm of how we sit down, how we calm ourselves down, how we get ourselves prepared to receive the announcements to set the pace for the day, and how we orderly leave and get ready to start class and the rigorous instruction that's planned and prepared for all of our scholars for that day. And a lot of the times, the teachers will incorporate some of those cheers and chants into their instruction or their routine, their class bell to bell schedule, so that kids can be pulled in. It's just part of the culture, it's part of the fabric of how we would do school and how kids will feel when they are a part of school. And it carries on at home. Parents will tell us, oh, they sing the songs in the car on the way to school or the way home, or it just doesn't get out of their head. And that's pretty much the point, because the more you hear something, the more it will marinate and it will stick. And that's what we want, because we believe success becomes with confidence and belief in themselves. And no matter how hard the work is and how rigorous it is, if we prepare their mindset, they will be able to execute.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh my goodness. So when I was reading that on your website, I was just thinking like there are adults, even me sometimes, who are not starting off with a motivational moment. We are just getting up and going, and for the children, and as you call them, scholars, for them to start off their days like that and with those affirmations and getting in the right spirit and being a community with their fellow peers, that is such a great start. And that's actually something that I need to do better of with myself, because sometimes I am just getting up. Sometimes I do schedule and make sure I have those moments with God and just a moment of silence and get myself together. And there's other times when I'm just up rushing. So
Yeah.
I am sure, like just like you said, those kids are loving it, those parents are loving it.
Yeah, all of that occurred under my leadership, as far as the years of Impact Charter School. Of course, things change when the leadership change. However, that's the part of the program that I so interested and excited about, of helping other leaders with, because we figured out what works, how kids are successful, what things are in place throughout the school day to make a school successful. A school is successful when the teachers are successful, when the scholars are successful. So it's part of that formula that I now use with EduStrategies to help other school leaders put things in place, whether it looks exactly like that or it's a little different based on their culture, but it has the same key ingredients to make sure their schools are successful and that kids have that lifetime memory, just like you shared. And kind of what you described is reminds me of like a homeschool setting almost. And it's very interesting because that's what's coming back. And that's what I am the most excited about when I'm talking to new leaders as the idea of school choice change and expand. More parents are demanding that homeschool setting, that private school setting, those smaller classes, those were the days where we can imagine and learning was sparks curiosity and we had time at school to explore it, to develop our minds, to be great learners, which help us when we get older to impact the world based on how we were shaped as kids. So that is something exciting for me. And just hearing you talk about it, I'm like, oh wow, we're getting back and onto something because that's what made us so successful when schools weren't so confined by testing, which I agree that there should be measurement and accountability. However, what we remember the most and how we are most impacted are those experiences in schools that stick with us for a lifetime because how we were allowed to imagine, explore, create, innovate, not just on the scholar side, but also on the instructional side. So, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. And you are so right. It is coming back. I never really looked at it like that. I am thinking of, yes, parents are homeschooling, but like you said, they want smaller environments, right? And
Right.
so great point. And let me just shout out my school. It was called Wise Oak School. It's no
Wow.
longer there. It was under the owner of Darlene Weber. She was going by Darlene Forney, but Weber. And maybe one day I'll be able to interview her. So yes, those years are very formative. And as someone who is over a school like yourself, like Darlene Weber, you are responsible for so much. You're responsible for the teacher-child relationship, the teacher-parent relationship, for the atmosphere, for the energy. It's a
Mhm.
lot. And from what I've read, you did such a great job.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And because of that, I really want to be able to touch on all areas because I am a mother, right? And I had challenges in schools, and I had challenges with my children in school. So I want to, have this conversation about the parental concerns, about the child concerns, the teacher concerns, as well as, being over a school. And so just like you said, the schooling is important because even when my children got old enough to attend school, I wanted to make sure that they were stable. I wanted to make sure they were in we lived close to great schools, and that I wanted stability. I wanted them to be able to flow all the way through. And I wanted them to have great relationships with their teachers. I was very active. I made sure the teachers knew that I was married. My children came from a two-parent household. And so that was very, very important. And so as parents, we make all of our decisions around our children's school. How far away are we going to work? Okay, we're seeking employment. We are thinking about, how are we going to get our children picked up on time? What is the structure like? And so, and schools also bring up the value of the homes around it,
Mhm.
right? So all of that is major. So yes, everyone has concerns as far as parental. Let me just ask you these questions since you are at the top, and for anyone that's listening who is a parent who has concerns, there's several things that I just want to touch on and ask your opinion about. Right now, we're going through all of these changes with school safety. And in Texas, I'm not sure if it's nationwide, but in Texas, there is a no cell phone rule. Right. And so my children are now in college, so I don't really have that experience. But my concern is, as I put myself in those parents' shoes, is I want my children to be able to call me if there's an emergency. What is your take on it as a charter school founder?
That's a great question. And
and
Actually,
mother.
yes. So I'm kind of the same boat as you where my daughter is in college, and cell phones had just become just so popular and a frequent presence in schools in the last, 5 to 8 years or something like that, to the point to where now you're seeing kindergartners, first graders bring phones to schools. I'm proud to say that before the laws were enacted regarding no cell phones, we were, again, one of the first to do it. We made it part of our policies, and I'll share why. I know a lot of families and parents say the same thing that you're sharing. Well, I want to be able to call my child. But when you think about it, when we were in school many years ago, many decades ago, we didn't have phones for our parents to call us, and we were just fine. Also, the schools have, uh, office phones. They still do. It didn't become obsolete like in a lot of our homes because we use our cell phone, but the schools still have landlines. If there's an emergency, then you can call the school. Now, here's why that policy is important. Cell phones can be very beneficial to the instruction as far as incorporating that technology. However, they also can be a distraction. A lot of schools have Chromebooks, iPads, computers where that same technology can be utilized inside the classroom without the distraction of a cell phone. Because of social media and all of those social apps and environments that have become so popular, especially among our adolescents, it is mentally hard for students to stay focused on the instruction that's presented before them if they're always thinking about, I wonder if anybody liked my post or saw my story, or, and even if I mean, it's just hard not to think about it, even as adults. If you think about it, when you're at work or you see adults on the job, they have that phone. They can't barely do their job. Exactly. Because they're thinking about, did I get a text? Did I get a call? So as it's just human behavior. And because we become so accustomed and so addicted to our phones, it can become a hindrance in the instructional process. And every school year, we have timelines, we have a pacing calendar, we have to get through. And a curriculum for the year within a certain amount of time. And every distraction is a delay. So when kids are distracted with cell phones, and even if they're not trying to access social media, if they're using their phones to record things that violate other kids' privacy, it becomes a problem, or an adult's privacy, it becomes a problem. So it creates additional problems in the school environment that's unnecessary a lot of times. In any school, you already have every day is different. There's never 2 days that are exactly alike, which is the exciting thing about working at a school. But when you allow additional things throughout the day, that becomes a distraction for, and I'm gonna just use one school, 450 kids plus the 60 to 70 staff members, then you're not being as productive as you could be if those phones were put away. Now, as far as an emergency, like I said, families can call the front office, and kids are in the middle of instruction. It's not that they're just sitting around being babysat, and you think of something like, oh, let me call and ask that they take out the dog, no, you can't do that, even though it may feel that way because you have that direct access, but it becomes an extreme distraction to everyone else in that class setting when if you call your child and they need to go to the bathroom to take your call. So imagine that times 20 is happening, say, every single child in that classroom, but different times of the day. So to make sure we have order and we're effective, I totally support legislation and policy making around no cell phones in the school. And I am a proponent for that, not just for the students, but also for the adults.
Let me tell you, you have proved your case. You hear me? So I totally understand. Now, back in the day, no, we did not have cell phones or anything like that, but we also didn't have the amount of violence, I don't think, in our schools either. But I totally get what you're saying. And there's still phones in there and they are with adults. And so, yeah, you have definitely proved your point for sure. So
And then
thank you for that.
you are welcome. And then when I think about it, and we may have, when you think about the 80s, they had it. They just didn't have phones to capture it and publish it on social media as much as we see today. So it may feel like is at a higher frequency, but technically it probably is not. But it's still, a cell phone wouldn't solve the problem of less violence.
Okay, I hear you. I hear
Got
you.
it.
Thank you so much. Parents, I hope you are listening. I hope this has addressed your concern as well. Now, don't mind me if you see me looking down and taking notes because you're saying things that I want to come back to.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
And I also did my homework. Okay.
I
So
love it.
okay, so we're still talking about the parent's perspective. Now, I had challenges, and I won't go through all of these because I had several, but I had challenges with teachers not allowing my children to go to the restroom while they were in class. Now, I could understand if they were abusing this policy, okay? But I had to, eventually tell my children, like, if you have to go to the restroom, you go and you call me so that I'm aware and then I can speak to the teacher, you know? Now, what is your policy? What is it that you think are the yays and nays of the restroom policy? How do you see it in your eyes?
That is
Got
also a good question. I used to get that a lot.
really?
Yeah, but again, it's that two-sided. I mean, as a mom, the first reaction is going to panic. Oh my God, how dare you make my child suffer and hold their bladder. And then you have the organizational side as far as, okay, I always say systems and policies, without it, you're asking for chaos. It just equals chaos. So you have to have system structures and policies in place to make sure that everyone is safe, everyone is taken care of, and everyone is supervised. So that's where school schedules are very important to make sure that bathroom breaks are built in. The number of students at any school always outnumber the number of adults on campus. So we had about 450 students, about anywhere from 50 to 70 adults at one given time. However, we were responsible for monitoring and supervising all 450 students. If something happens to just one of those students, it can be very detrimental. So we have to have policies in place to make sure that all kids are supervised, to ensure that they're safe, to make sure that a child isn't running off in the street, to make sure a child isn't kidnapped in broad daylight. So we have to have systems in place to be accountable for where everyone is all the time. So the more we deviate from that, it increases the likelihood of something happening to a child at any given time. So it doesn't mean no, don't let them go to the bathrooms or anything like that. But you have to know, and that usually comes with an experience from a teacher. When do a child really have to go to the bathroom versus when they're just trying to get out of class? We've seen it in practice over and over again where students use the bathroom excuse because they are either challenged with work that they don't want to do at that time, or maybe they just want to get in the bathroom and look in the mirror, believe it or not, or meet their friends in the bathroom and have like a little social sex. So we've seen it all to where we have to have someone on the halls pretty much monitoring the in and outs of the restroom to make sure, okay, if you have to go to the restroom, go in, get back to class, not go in and be on another hall that you're totally not supposed to be on, or you end up in the nurse office or the front office and that teacher thinking that you're in the bathroom. So imagine if that is being done by multiple kids throughout the day in multiple classes, you can kind of lose control pretty quickly. So is no offense. It's not that kids are being harmed, or is everything drives back to policy, safety, structure, and security.
Thank you so much. That needed to be heard by myself as well as I'm sure other parents who are concerned, like you said, of their kids' bladder. Like, no, I don't want any problem. So, yes.
And I do encourage, there are cases where officially, because I do want to put that disclaimer out, where some kids do have bladder concerns and that they're being treated for incontinence or something similar. When that's the case, that parent writes a letter or sends a doctor's note and it's on file in the nurse office and they are allowed to go. But it is very rare. We are talking about less than 5%.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. System structures and policies. You heard it. You heard it. And also for teachers and the administration to allow time for those breaks in between.
Yes, and it usually is built in the classroom's bell-to-bell schedule of when they go to the bathroom, and that's so you don't have 3 or 4 classes trying to take 20 plus kids per class to a bathroom with only 3 to 4 stalls in it all at once. Because if it's not timed right, you lose instructional time. So they're not going to wait in line for 50 kids to go to the bathroom. So all of that, the logistics is so key at any school, all the way down to when they go eat, when they go to the restroom, how long they're scheduled to go there and back, and which restroom they're assigned to go to, because time matters. Transition time matters. The time it takes to move a class from this part of the hall to the next part of the hall, or this room to outside for PE. It is all considered and planned down to the science to make sure every child gets the very best experience and the most out of their education when they show up to school.
Thank you. Thank you. I can tell that you know exactly what you're talking about for sure. For sure, for sure. And like you said, you've heard these concerns before. So this is not the first time that you've heard this, and you have some type of system to accommodate and to account for those instances. So thank you for that. Now you mentioned teachers, and it's important for the teachers to understand. So let's talk about the teachers for a second. How do you go about hiring the teachers? What are you looking for?
So I like this question as well because that was one of the things that I took very, very seriously. Matter of fact, my dissertation was on that, how policies affect teacher retention and recruitment in Louisiana public schools. Since for the 11 years where I led Impact Charter School, I literally facilitated and sat in on every single interview. So at this point, I've interviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of candidates because I was very specific about who I hired. So the culture was everything, and I wanted to make sure that we did not get the wrong fit. Now, of course, nothing is 100% perfect, but we were pretty close. And I believe that's why we were so successful because I ask specific questions to each candidate to see, do they fit with this culture based on what we're looking for, based on what we do here, how we do things here, how we educate our kids, how we engage with our kids, how we work as a team, the amount of time that we put in before and after school, even on the weekends. If that doesn't all the time align with how everyone's life is set up. So it's very important that I know these things on the front end because once you get in, it's almost difficult to move people out. It doesn't benefit anyone, including the kids, to have that type of turnover, especially when in the middle of the school year. So when we look for teachers, of course, experience is always great, but we're always looking for a good fit. So when I interview, I'm able to feel the pulse and the temperature of that candidate, as well as, yeah, I'm looking at a lot of their qualitative data and their quantitative data, but I'm interviewing myself to consider qualitatively, does this candidate fit in our school culture? Are they going to help grow to the next level? Do they want to grow to the next level? If so, what are their goals? Based on what their goals are, does it fit in with what we can offer? Because I would not want anyone to come work there and be stagnant. So we look for a variety of things when onboarding staff to make sure that the environment and the culture that we were trying to or that we were building we were able to sustain that. And that can be, it just depends on the staff that are in place. It can make or break your school environment.
I truly believe that. Now, what are like two qualities that you say are must-haves and two that are unacceptable?
So outside of the mandatory requirements, like you have to have a bachelor's degree, you have like, so I'm not talking about those things that's by law required, but the things that are mandatory, I believe that one, you have to have a growth mindset. You have to be a very positive person. You have to be open to change. You have to be open to being challenged. You have to want more. You have to believe in the ability of achieving excellence. Also, being a team player is very important to me because we did not operate on an island. We did not operate in silo. So all hands on deck. To that, were non-negotiables, I would almost say the opposite of that because it's so that's just how important that was. Negativity did not thrive. And even if it didn't start that way, if someone shift that way and there's no change or change in that mindset, it just does not thrive in that type of environment. Also, availability. So being able to show up, be reliable, be self-motivated, those things are important because I can teach anyone how to teach, but it takes us several steps backwards if I have to beg you to come to work or beg you to be motivated or excited about children learning or beg you to do a lesson plan. So at that point, it's no longer motivated to do the job. It's more of motivated to have a job, just to say you have a job. So that type of mindset does not work in a thriving environment. And those are one of those non-negotiables because it's already challenging enough to get people trained up to the level that's needed in order for them to be successful. But when you add those other professional barriers on top, it delays the process for everyone. And at the end, kids suffer.
They do. And I see the correlation with, well, any place, really, any workplace, whether you're working at a school or in corporate America, leadership matters. And I truly believe that you can't lead if you don't care, right? So
Exactly.
if you don't care about your staff, your team, or students, there's no way that you can lead them. For sure. So
Exactly. I completely agree with that.
yes, yes. And you have a motto that
Mhm.
says, we need a school that looks like Disneyland but operates like Harvard.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So when I built the school 12 years ago or 11, 12 years ago, it was so important that when kids walked through the door that they just felt happy, safe. The same experiences that you have when you walk into Disney World. It's like, wow, this is amazing. I'm just happy to be here. Where it just doesn't feel like school. It feels like a place that you belong and you don't ever want to leave. Going back to when we had the SES program and that I shared, and the city of Baker was one of our school districts that we would provide tutoring services to, their buildings were so just outdated to where it did not spark that excitement to learn. A lot of people don't understand how much your environment plays on your mental mindset, your mood, your outlook. And just think about it, just the color of how walls are painted. So if you're in a dark room where the walls are brown or even black, it's going to put you in a space of, I'm going to kind of go to sleep. I want to just kind of chill versus if you're in a room where the walls are bright and just vibrant colors, it just naturally sets your mood to another space. So I felt that. I believe that that's why some of the kids probably felt the way that they did just for how the space felt. So when I got the opportunity where I can design what this school looks like on the inside, I made sure I'm like, well, I started, okay, blue is a calm color. It's a happy color. So in every room, we painted the rooms two different colors of blue. One wall was a contrast of the other wall, but they were both blue. The tiles that I picked out for the floors was different patterns of blue, gray, white. Even matched the uniform colors to the way to the environment of the building to where it all came together. And so just the aesthetically what it looks like when you walk in, as well as the customer service of the staff, because that is one of the things that I used to hone in on my front office staff. Customer service is so important. People should feel welcome. People should greet them with a smile. When you answer the phone, talk with a smile. I will give them the introduction of how we answer the phone. It's a great day at Impact. How can I assist you today? So tape it on your computer where you're saying that every single time because it just shifts how it makes a person feel. So one of the greatest things to get which was the feedback that people will share with us when they used to walk in that space was it just feels so pleasant in here. I mean, it's just something different. I mean, you have no idea how I heard that over and over again. So it made me feel good because they did not know that that was the goal. That was the goal. So they're thinking they're just giving me compliment. And I'm like, wow, it's working. So what was designed to do to make people feel that difference when they walked in, they felt it and it worked. So that's the part of the Disney World contrast. So as far as the Harvard contrast, I believe that all kids can learn no matter how rigorous the instruction, if you create the environment and teach aligned with their learning styles and make sure that teachers are trained well, make sure that the culture is well, then you will have a rigorous, high performing academic environment just as Harvard is known to be. However, in order to do it in that K-12 space or at least the K-8 space, it's so important that all of these things come together. So I look at impact under my leadership that it was a combination of Disney and Harvard. We're going to be very happy while we're here, but we're producing amazing Ivy League results. And that's what we went by.
Yes, it is intentional. They came in there just calm and welcoming and pleased, right? But it was intentional. You were
Yes.
intentional about everything that you've done for these scholars, for the teachers, for the parents. And I'm going through my notes because you said something about having the kids teaching to them. You focus on the whole child, understanding that every scholar has their own path. You meet them where they are, support their individual goals, and provide what they need for success. So that's exactly what you're talking about. And when I read that, I was thinking, well, how do they know what their individual goals are? That's what I was thinking. But as I sat back and listened to what you said now, which is in agreement with what is on the website, is that you understand that each child learns differently. So that is kind of their goal, is to be successful, but they all have a different path of getting there. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Differentiation is so key. And it goes back to how we train our staff. That you have to actually be trained and developed on how to teach based on learning style, how to group your kids based on different learning styles or learning abilities or levels that they are currently functioning on. The curriculum that a school selects is important to make sure that it aligns with being able to facilitate instruction in that way in order to be able to achieve that. But every child is different. Every child, there's no cookie cutter, one size fit all, but there is a way that's research based on how to successfully do that in a classroom.
Thank you. Yeah, that's definitely important because even when you have children, we as parents understand that they both They all learn differently. They all act differently. They have different routines. One room's clean, the other one not
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
was gonna be my next example. I completely my mind went blank. But I, completely agree. I always use that example with parents. Think about the parents who have multiple kids. The personalities are completely different. The desires and the motivations are different. The just their motivation, their experience in life, which is going to shape how they learn. It's going to shape how they progress through the day at the school day, as well as through matriculate through the different grade levels. So it's important for teachers. Again, it goes back to that training to be developed and skilled in how to identify that and learn your scholars so you can understand personalities, their strengths, their weaknesses, understand how to read the data that you're collecting over time from students, because that will give you a lot about a child and their ability and how they work. So it's a multitude of things together that teachers can take into consideration to make sure that they properly group their kids in order to make sure that they are differentiating learning in their space, in their instructional spaces, so that every child can achieve their maximum and ultimate results.
in addition to that, you were talking about the environment. And what I am hearing and what I experience and what I know is that what you are saying directly ties into the experiences of those in corporate America, those on their jobs, is environment is so important. It is
Mhm.
so difficult to go to work every day and you know that it's toxic. You know that it's negative energy there. The ride to work is stressful. So I can only imagine the impact on children who are unable to discern that, or unable, they feel it, but they may react by acting out.
Absolutely. And you're right. Adults, we have to do it for the adults in the school as well as the kids. I mean, that is one of the other things I was very intentional about, who I will pair together to work with. And based on their strengths and weaknesses, their personalities, down to who would be selected to supervise certain grade bands based on their strengths and weaknesses and personalities. That's how you get the maximum outcomes. You have to When we talk about data driven, it encompasses so much more than test scores. You have to be very attentive to every single thing around you that's happening in that school building, and with every single staff or contributor who are stakeholder who has something to do with the success of the school, to make sure that you make the very best decisions and very intentional about how you operate, how you structure your teams and your environments in order to get those outcomes. Because you're right, the same thing, because at the end of the day, we're talking about human behavior, the same human behavior that we see a lot in kids. It just doesn't go away once you make 18 or 21. Like, oh no, I don't have these practices anymore. Yeah, they remain. They're just not managed by another adult, technically, in a way that a student is. But the goal is, how do we achieve these outcomes? So if you want to get to that goal, you have to work with what you have and know how to organize it to win, because you can't change those things. You can do things to prevent a lot of it or mitigate the risk of getting it in front of you, but you cannot change how people think, how they behave, habits that they've done over the years, especially if the talent and what they brings to the table outweigh what you would like to change. You have to be creative to find ways to make it work for the bigger goal of what you're trying to achieve.
Yes, yes, yes. Toxicity does not discriminate, whether if it's
I
impacting children or adults.
I agree.
Because
That is
so
true.
outside of this podcast, hosting this podcast, I help visionary leaders create cultures where people love to work. Because of my experiences in the workplace, I sometimes it was painful. It was painful and unnecessary. And so what I do is well, the services I provide are like leadership development, employee empowerment, just having community conversations, because it's necessary. And it takes one small thing, an action that can totally ruin a relationship that was misunderstood, that was unintentional, and can easily be rectified. And so I help resolve challenges that I faced, right? I want to be the solution, just like you're being the solution, right? Now, you were raised in Baker, Louisiana, right? Did you go through that same school district?
So not exactly. When I was in school, it was part of the neighboring school district, East Baton Rouge Parish, before it broke off. So I did attend Baker schools when I was in middle school, but I still graduated from another high school in the district. So, and it wasn't as the demographics were different back then. So in the 80s and 90s, it was very diverse school district. Over time, now it's not as diverse. So the challenges are different from that you see now versus what you saw 20, 25 years ago.
Okay. Okay. So your challenges that the challenges that your students, the current students at Impact, are not the same challenges when you were, growing up in that age bracket. There's something totally different. So you're not trying to resolve challenges you saw while you were in school. It wasn't until after.
Yes, it was after, and that's what I was sharing with once we were servicing the students through tutoring, through SES services, that's when we saw how the district pretty much went down or the schools had gone down because the facilities weren't the same. And when I talk about demographics, more of just the disparities in I don't want to say economic class because I will say more choice was available. Well, it's available now than it was then. So you saw a lot of the students who went to public school 20 years ago, those same families now go to private school. So it leaves just one in those metropolitan areas one, and I'm not going to just say one, but the majority of the students that go there now present different challenges versus when it was more diverse. So you're seeing different experiences without the school, different academic results versus a lot of families that were middle to working class that would whether they had tutoring or not, they will put their kids in tutoring and pay for it, or they would register their kids in a lot of extracurriculum activities so that they can be well-rounded. A lot of those families have gone on to the private school sector versus now families that did not experience that growing up as much, so they didn't have that to pass down to their kids. So it's more of I'm sending my child to school. So that's why it's so important that the school create those experiences and that foundation and that exposure so that those students can be well-rounded regardless of what type of exposure experience they have or may not have outside of the school.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. And so not only are you doing exactly what you want your scholars to do is to help those forward and also give back. And so
Absolutely.
you're actually giving back to the
Yeah.
same community that you grew up in, even though you didn't have those same experiences or challenges.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Yes, excellent, excellent. Now, to finish off with the parents' perspective, what do you wish parents knew that could further excel their children's success?
So that's another great question. One of the things that I wish parents knew is how important and the reality of what occurs during the school day. I think a lot of parents are not aware of the different dynamics that happens in a classroom unless they actually come there one day and just sit there and be like, "Oh, I didn't know all this takes place at a school. I have a whole new respect." Also, I wish parents knew that don't already know the importance of making sure that your child has the practice and habits of reading at a very early age. The earlier you can expose them to reading or being read to, the more successful they will be soon as they start in a school setting. I mean, reading drives everything, but reading has to be taught. So it's so important to invest in books. A lot of families don't buy books to keep in their homes. So make it a habit of buying books, have a library of books. Not necessarily, I mean, it's great to have the iPads and phones and games of that nature. It's great to be able to read and do academic games on there. But again, it's still a distraction. Books are so important. And even though we have technology, I don't think the use or the benefit of books will ever go away because that is what promotes that forever learning. So, and books can be used for so many things more than just a textbook. Well, I have a book, we go to school, it's a textbook. No, they have so many books. They have self-help books, they have cookbooks, they have fictional books that will really spark and drive a child's imagination to take them in such a four-way space to where it becomes habit to reading all the time. Reading also builds a child's vocabulary. That's the only way to improve a child's fluency in reading. The more and more you read, it's not something that you can buy more of, or you can just want it and have it, or get it off the shelf. It comes with practice. The more you read, the more you will increase your vocabulary, the better you will improve your fluency, and the better you will be able to process information and complex text as you matriculate up through the grades. But you have to start early because you need the time to build that, and you want to build it on time. So I always say time is a non-renewable resource. You can't get that back. So the earlier you can start, the better. So if parents will just take on that philosophy and put books in front of their kids as early as possible, as early as the womb, while they're in their womb, and just start reading to your kids, reading stories that spark that imagination. And when they get old enough to read on their own, find out what they're interested in. So if a child doesn't like, I'll say, in superheroes, don't give them books about superheroes. They're probably not going to read it. So if they like insects and flowers, find books, fictional books that have topics on insects and flowers, or if they like, I don't know, thriller books. Find out what they like, and they're more prone to read it, because the goal is to get them to read no matter what. And I used to tell our scholars and our families, look, just to start introducing the habit. They have a cell phone, tell them before they can go outside or whatever it is they like to do, get the timer on their cell phone, put it on 20 minutes, and then you can build up, or even if it's 10 minutes, and build up, and tell them, put the timer on, just go in the court and just read. And just don't stop until the timer goes off. That way they're not racing against trying to, if you tell them read this chapter, once they start tuning out, they're going to just start flipping through pages. But just put the timer on 10 or 20 minutes and just read. And then when it goes off, then if they're done, let them go off and play. But if they're reading a really good book they're interested in, that's a page turner, that timer is going to go off. They're not going to want to stop. Now they're engulfed in what the storyline is. So that's how you build that habit and that practice of reading. But you have to push it like it's the most important thing in the world. It's not one of those things you can do today and put it down tomorrow, or do it at the beginning of the month and then let it taper off. It will pay off so much. Your kids will thank you for the rest of their lives if they will instill and develop that habit in their children as early as possible.
Truer words have never been spoken. So I didn't even explain this at the very beginning, but I go by Kim the SME, and SME stands for Speaker of My Experiences. And
Mm.
corporate America is usually subject matter expert, right? So I was given that title in corporate America. I too have an accounting background. That's what my experience in corporate was. But yes, they gave me subject matter expert without the pay, right? So I
Right.
have changed it into speaker of my experiences, because there's so many people out here and so many podcasters who are, making their living off of other people's experiences, other people's pain. If there was no more gossip or bad news to carry, then I'm not sure, what they would speak on next. I don't know if they would just fabricate something or change it to something positive, right? And so you have really spoken the truth, because that was me. My father used to have me read Reader's Digest. That's
Mm,
a book way back then.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yes, and he used to say that if you can read these books, then you can read anything. And so it did help with vocabulary, right? It did help with phonetics. And he was also a sky cap. And so he would bring home change and money. And every night I was in there and he had me counting the money. So it was, like you said, starting at a younger age. And when you do that, like you said, push it, but don't punish it. Don't make it punishment. Make it fun. And
Mhm.
so when it is time to read, it's not like they're being forced. It's something that they enjoy.
Yeah.
And I didn't carry everything over as an adult with my children. Yes, I had them read, but I did make the mistake of getting like one daughter motivational books and philosophy and things that I liked, and that was an error because she likes anime, she likes other things, and so you've made some excellent points because it is very important to number one start early, number two make it fun, to encourage it and not make it a type of punishment to where they actually dread it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. And one thing teaching now is much different than when I grew up, especially with me being raised in a private environment, in a small environment. English was like very important. Number one, cursive. Number
Mhm.
two, I don't even know if they do this anymore. My children didn't, but we had to use diagram sentences. So we actually had the lines with the noun and the verb, and then we had to draw all these diagrams just to make sure that
Wow.
we knew each part of the word, what its responsibility was, and how to make a proper sentence. So, like you said,
That's
fluency is very, very important. Now let's get a little on the personal side. So now you've already mentioned that your husband is an educator.
mhm,
He too worked at Impact Charter,
mhm.
correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And now you also have a daughter. Was your daughter at Impact Charter as well?
So she was not because she missed the grade. Man, so by the time so when we started with grades pre-K. No, I'm sorry, kindergarten through 3rd grade. And I think she was in 5th grade. Or so I think she was in 5th grade by that time. But if I were to have more kids at that time during when I was the leader of Impact, then of course I would hands down that's how proud I am of the school that they would attend there. But she did not get to experience it as a student, but she did get to experience through just my lived experience of, watching me, watching the kids, or she knew some of the kids at Impact. So
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay, thank you for answering that. And then can you talk about the timeline of before you became a founder of the school? Did you go through, like after you received your degrees, did you go through principal and assistant and superintendent and all of that? Or how did that work for those who are listening and are interested in going through the same channels that you went through?
So I've met a lot of founders, school founders, and what I've noticed that each path is different. Some founders were former teachers, some were former administrators, some were not. Some went through these school programs that fellowships that help leaders open schools. I don't think they're no longer around, most of them that I'm thinking about. But my background was accounting, auditing, operations, business. So I was responsible for I was just the visionary of the school, the launch of it, the operations of it, bringing it all together based on the vision that God gave me. And my husband, he's a certified teacher. He's a certified educational leader. At that time, he had been in education for, I think at that point, 15 years before, or 10 years, I can't remember, 10 or 15 years before Impact came around. So the academic piece, but he did not start off as the principal, believe it or not. I actually brought in a principal when we first started, and my husband was a teacher. He was the 3rd grade teacher that first year. And the principal that I hired during our startup year, he was not aligned with the mission and the vision. And again, when we started out, I talked about how important that was just to be in alignment, because it does not work if if they're not in line. But it goes back to one of those, when you're starting up a school, you don't really have startup money to pay people to switch their jobs. So it was harder to find someone to start up and hold off on pay until we get ready to open. So that particular principal, he got in. And when we talked about that toxicity, he was very toxic to the staff. And it was worse because he was the leader. And I was entrusting the staff under his leadership to, maintain the school while I do the operation side. So he did not last. I think he only lasted maybe 3 months of that first year. In October, we had to move in different directions. So at that point, I had to be the principal myself. So and I don't know if that was good or bad, but it was very stressful. I will say that my heart goes out to principals all over America. I mean, it is not an easy job. It is not an easy feat. I mean, but I just like any other gift, some people are gifted for that. But it did give me that real time experience of what it's like. So when I bring in the next principal, I was more sensitive to what they were going through, based on what I was holding them accountable to, what that reality really was. So that next year, hired another principal, and he was in line. He was in alignment with the mission and vision of the school. However, the problem with that principal was the skill. So it's almost like he had the will, but not the skill. He had the education, the piece down, but the academic piece, but he did not have the skill of leading people. So you need more than just that academic piece. You have to be able to understand human behavior, how to lead staff, how to keep order. It goes back to policies and procedures, so it's just other things that just wasn't there. So that's why experienced leadership is so, so important. So by that third year, so yeah, we definitely had our growing pains. We definitely had that. So in Louisiana, they have ethics law. So in order for an immediate family member to be able to work for a district or a school where the agency head is a directly kin, according as defined by ethics law, they can be hired as a teacher only if they're certified, or if they were employed there prior to the agency head, which he actually was. Because remember, Education Explosion was a tutoring organization for several years before a charter school even came about. So once our board council sought approval and an official opinion from the Louisiana Ethics Board to give us an official opinion. Can we do this? And they looked at the law and saw where it qualified that he can. Then that's when he became principal, but he did not report directly to me. So they had a plan on how that was. So that's the year he became principal. Of course, he aligned with the mission and vision because he was one of the co-founders of the organization and he understood what we were trying to do. And he had been the principal for impact moving forward since that time.
Lovely,
Yeah.
lovely, lovely. Now, I heard you mention funding, and that brought me my memory to recall that to start the school, you actually, started it with your own funds. You actually took a
Mhm.
loan out on your home. Is that accurate?
Yes. So a few different things. So when you're starting a school, I shared this story. I thought that when we first got approval for the contract, the charter contract, that I will be able to easily access funds to be able to start up the school. The state had what's called the charter startup loan that new charter operators were supposed to be able to access, where you could borrow up to $100,000 to get started. I tried to access those funds. No one knew what I was talking about. They're like, no, there's no money in the account, or no, you can't get it. Figure something else out. So I went to different banks. They all said no. So a lot of things that we needed a facility. We needed staff to hire to help with the startup efforts. We needed to buy books and curriculum and just basic needs to even market the school. So we were blessed with an angel investor who saw what I was trying to do. He believed in the vision that I had. And after just several weeks of talking to him, he talked to his team, and they agreed to bless us with the millions of dollars needed to be able to build that brand new facility that we talked about earlier. However, it did not solve the problem for everything else. So we did have to use our personal funds. We had to take out, like, leverage the equity in our home, and even our board members. I was literally trying to do everything myself. I was I had an 800 number routed to my phone for parents who were interested in enrolling their child. And I was also the recruiter. I was also the teacher recruiter. I was also the trying to design the school, the architect, the builder. I was just trying to do 100 things myself because we literally did not have the money to be able to hire all of these different moving parts. And one of my board vice president at that time, he just felt so sorry for me. He's like, Chakesha, you're going to burn yourself out. You got to stop this. You need to get at least a part-time secretary to at least be stationary to enroll parents when they enroll. So at that time, we did find an office at a local church down the street. They only charged me like $400 a month for that, just an office space. So that gave me a place to at least be for parents to come and say, hey, come here if you want to sign up for our school. And so he gave me the money to hire a part-time secretary and to handle that part. And that was a game changer. It just relieved so much off my shoulders where I can go and do other things until we get started. So just taking that year, that startup year, figuring it out along the way, that was my full-time volunteer job, getting the school started. I did not get paid from it until it was well into operation. And before it started operation again, my husband was, working, of course, full-time, and then we had savings. So we took what we had and put it all in the school because we believed in it. We believed it was going to change the community and transform the community and impact the lives of kids for years to come up into their adulthood. And that's what it has done and is doing so 10, 11 years later under our leadership. So it was, yeah, it was worth it, but it is a sacrifice. It is an investment. So I do tell founders that when they start off, there's no magic guaranteed pot of money that you can go access for starting a school or any business for that matter. You're going to have to invest and sacrifice to get it going. But if it's meant for you to do, and that's what you're gifted to do and called to do, resources will come.
Yes, I love that. You have said so many gems in
Thank
that,
you.
and I just wanted to let you flow through that. There were so many things that I took notes on, and so many lessons for the audience. So number one is I truly like that once you saw that the several principles were not a good fit, you took action. And we don't always see that. Sometimes they stay longer than they should, and they end up warping the people that they're around, the environments, and that causes the good people to leave. So, everything that you're saying is showing that you actually care.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, that was my life for a whole time, but I learned so much from it. And human, like so big on culture, and just like what you shared earlier, like that's kind of what you do. That was one of the same things that motivated me. I didn't talk so much about the adults, but when I did work for an agency or another organization and I wasn't happy or fulfilled going there every day, I felt like I'm just spending time. And I have to do things that I feel like are purposeful, that I'm making an impact on. And it's not, I never have just take jobs just for money, because I will drive myself crazy if I don't feel like I'm being beneficial to me or them. And at first, the career I had before the school, which was auditing, at first, I was so excited. I thought I was gonna be able to make an impact by giving these agencies recommendations. I was the auditor for state hospitals, and every year, I will see that I'm telling them the same recommendations over and over again. They're like, "Okay," they don't go and change anything. So, I'm like, "What am I doing?" And then I did not see where I had room for growth, because no one was noticing that extra effort, and I didn't see the impact in the work. So I have to see the impact somewhere on one end or the other. So I just stopped. It got to the point where I just did not enjoy going to work anymore. And then I would look at my supervisor, who had been in that field for 30 plus years. He was almost about to be retired. And I would just think to myself, this cannot be my life for the next 30 years. It was just making me stressed just thinking about it. So I did not know I will, you know, end up in the education space, but I did have a prayer that I wanted to be an impactful in what I was doing. So that's why I believe I started problem solving on my husband's job, because I wasn't able to do it on mine now that I think about it. So, however, I was able to see the impact. And I always said to myself after that experience, I said, if I ever had an opportunity to be the boss of anyone or supervise anyone, I would want to create a space where people love coming to work, because that is the one thing that I wanted going on other jobs that I did not love going to. So I was like, man, I would want to be able to create that. So that's why that was so important to me, which transferred into culture, because I believe that if people enjoy being at a place, they're going to produce at maximum effort. So, and at the end of the day, when you talk about schools, everything I do is student focused. Those are the customers, the students. And not that we don't care about the staff, but the students don't benefit unless the staff produce. So in order for the staff to produce, because they are human beings and not robots, they have to feel valued and impactful in order for the students to benefit. So that's also why that was so important to me.
Yes, 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 yes. Again, you have so many gems. And so for everybody listening, I hope you are really taking notes and listening what Dr. Scott is truly saying. When you really believe in something, when you really want something, there are certain sacrifices and certain steps that you are going to take, right? So she's talked about addressing decisions that didn't work out well, as far as the principles. She's talked about using her own funds. There are so many people who are in business right now, and they're doing well, or they're just starting off, but they're still not, going to make that leap of taking out a home equity line of credit based on their belief. So this is faith, this is belief, this is impact, this is care, this is love, this is, a true dream and desire for children, for future scholars. So she used her own funds. She wore many hats. So at the beginning of any journey, we don't always see the path, and we don't always know everything that's going to be needed. So as you go down this road, you start seeing these curves and these additional needs. And then the other thing was that you actually asked for help. You asked for help, you received help, and not only that, you received unexpected help. You
Yeah.
received, angel investing. So for all those who have dreams, who don't know where the resources are coming from, I'm speaking to myself. I am the speaker of my own experiences. It is coming, it is on the way, and you just have to take those steps and all will be provided to you. So
Absolutely.
thank you for sharing that. You said you believed in it and you mentioned problem solver. And so whenever I start a presentation, I usually ask people to say, tell me about yourself. And usually when they do that, they mention their titles. And I understand that titles, there was a cost for that. And that means that you have achieved something, you've reached something and you have that extra knowledge. But when I ask someone, tell me about yourself, or when it's asked for me, I say that I'm a problem solver. I say that I'm a truth seeker. I say that I'm a bridge builder, right? Those are all three qualities that, regardless of what room I'm in, that is me. What are three qualities that you say are you regardless of what room you're in? I know you mentioned problem solving. That was right in line with where I was going.
Yes, I think I am a creator. I think I'm a builder. Like, I like to create things that weren't there before and make that environment or what I'm changing better than how I found it. I like to innovate. I am an innovator. I'm an educator. I am a Christian. I'm a woman of God. I love to impact. And I guess that's why, we named the school Impact. I like to build. I like to invest in other people. I like to encourage and uplift. I like to transform. I like to transform communities. I like to transform leaders. When I was just starting out as a leader, again, I started this work in my late 20s, early 30s. So I'm thinking I've always been good with projects, like building out projects and leading projects. But when it was time to bring the people in aspect inside of it by working with others, hiring people, I thought I can just simply, now again, this was about 13 years ago and I didn't know any better. I thought I can just, like, you do this, is like I was doing a checkoff list. And once I realized that people don't work that way, they don't work like robots. I mean, even though I know we have AI and all of that, but it still cannot do the things that they're not going to teach kids in a physical space. So you have to work with humans. You have to have humans in the front office. You have to have humans in the nurse office. So in order to engage them and get them to want to do their job, because they're not children where you can just make them do ABC and they're going to just do it. Communication is so important. So if you don't have the skill of how to effectively communicate to your team members and to know how to receive communication so that you can get the best out of your team members to make sure they feel that they are heard and understood, you will not achieve your goals. And that's one of those lessons that I kind of had to learn later on through my experience because I was not taught that because I was not in leadership. I wasn't formally trained in leadership. Again, my background was audit and accounting. We worked with projects. We looked at documents and we checks and balances, not necessarily have to engage. So I had a mentor that would help and redirect me, be strong enough and brave enough to call me out if not right or I'm not thinking correctly as far as how I approach a problem. And then I just became an expert. I'm not going to say a full expert, but I became better with how I communicate with my team members, with my colleagues, with my staff, and how to build other leaders to be able to lead the work that the small, where I can't be in all spaces at all time. So now that I know how much that has helped me and how that's a skill that just have to be developed, is a lot of people take it for granted that, well, you've been a teacher 20 years, so you should be able to be a principal. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to have certain people skills, soft skills, to be able to lead other people. You also have to have certain backbone or level of firmness about yourself in order to keep order and consistency. So if you're not formally or officially taught, or those skills weren't developed in you to where someone was cultivating you to be a leader, then it's going to be hard for you to be successful. And without great leadership, you're not going to have great schools. So that's what's one of the things that spark EduStrategies or drive my motivation to now impact more leaders. The more leaders you can impact, now you're multiplying the number of students that you can impact, because each leader is responsible for their own set of hundreds of students. So each leader that has the proper training and coaching and mentoring, now you're impacting hundreds of thousands of students. So that's what's important to me when you ask. I'm a builder, entrepreneur, creator, a leader, all of those things.
Yes, yes, yes. You said what took me all the way out and up. You said, be brave enough to call me out. Yes, I cannot stand a yes man. You
Yeah.
know, tell me what you think. I'm definitely going to tell you what I think in a respectful way. But
Yes.
oftentimes people get so caught up in, what was said instead of why it was said or the intentions of it. So, yes. Be brave enough to call me out because none of us are perfect.
Right. And you have to, in the moment you close yourself up where you no longer can learn, then you lose your purpose. It's like you're finished. So you want to be able to learn and always develop yourself and get better and better. And the only way to do that is if you get feedback. It goes back to that data collection that I talked about. So the more feedback you can get of how you're being perceived outside your own eyes, the more you can be able to adjust and navigate in other spaces, because everyone sees things differently. So if you can get another perspective outside of you, it only helps you.
Yes, you said perspective, and that took me back to when we met at Good Soil Conference. You actually, I don't know if you remember this, but you actually bought my conversation cards.
I
They're called
did.
questions and perspectives. And
Uh-huh.
that is so important because we all have different lived and unlived experiences. And different perspective, and that causes different perspectives, and that's the whole reason why I made those cards. Have you had a chance to use them or
I have, and that's why I love them so much, because it's a way to force conversation without, even when you can't explain it, because it's hard for people to come off the top of their heads and just start talking about deep topics or even shallow topics. But the more you can learn a person and how they think and their perspectives, it improves your ability to communicate with that person. And not all the time everyone is open naturally to just start doing that. Some people, you have to pull it out, and I think it sets the tone to do that. And so communication drives so much, but how effective it is just depends on that person's perspective or knowing the other individual and how they're wired. You don't know that. And the only way to know that is if you build relationships to understand how they think, so that you make sure you and adjust yourself. I can address, let's say, three different staff members with the same problem. I will probably address it three different ways because they all have three different personalities. Some of them one of them can take me being a little more firm and direct, and it's more efficient for both of us. The other one may, if I don't take my time with it, they'll leave out stressed for the next 3 weeks. So, and then, and then the other one, I will have to probably redirect and keep on track because they're going all around the world, like the friend of what the topic is about. So knowing who you're dealing with always drive the outcome of the conversation, because the end goal is to be effective. What are you trying to communicate? Did I accomplish that by the end of the communication or the end of the conversation? And if not, then regardless if you got it out or not, it was a waste of time. So we want to be effective in what we're trying to do. And I also use the example of, let's say, two siblings. Even if they grow up in the same house, even if they're twins, they are not going to the bathroom at the same time, to the classrooms at the same time. They have their own set of friends. They don't have the same conversations. They're not all on the same end of the phone. So they go through their own life experiences that shape the way they think, they shape their perspectives, even though they grew up in the same house and by the same parents. So until you get to know a person, you have no idea how they think, how they process information, how they react or respond to certain things that you're going to tell them and when you're going to tell them. So you spend your time learning that so that you can communicate well. And once you do that, now they're carrying out their tasks. When they carry out their tasks wrong, they're actually working the leader 10 times harder. And whatever they don't do that's up under that leader, guess who has to do it? The leader. Now you're overworking yourself because of something so simple as lack of communication or effective communication.
You all, this has been a great conversation. We will have to make this a part 2. Please come back next week as we continue this conversation with Dr. Chakesha Scott. It's going to be good, y'all. Come on back. Y'all be blessed. Bye. At the very beginning, you mentioned that Impact Charter is no longer under your leadership. What are some of the challenges that you have experienced? We've talked about all the accolades and all of the decision making and the foundation of it. What are some of the challenges?
So I would say as it refers to, impact no longer under my leadership. So my most current and biggest challenge that I'm facing right now is this experience of how politics can interfere with something that we're doing great. So even though things happen, like what happened to Impact Charter School, where law was maliciously passed and targeted just for Impact Charter School that would empower the state school board called BESE, the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, to reconstitute our board to overtake our school.
So let's back up. So I want to make sure that I understand correctly and the listeners have a good understanding of what you're saying. So there was a nonprofit. There is a nonprofit. So I would say that's at the top, right?
Education Explosion.
Education Explosion. And it governs the actual charter school, Impact Charter School.
Yes.
Right? And Education Explosion has board members where you were included as well, that makes decisions over this school.
So I was in a board member. I was the chief executive officer.
Okay, you were the chief executive officer. But still, that was a nonprofit that was over a charter school. And you're saying that a government entity, BESE, has come in and you said reconstituted. So they have placed their own members in your nonprofit.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this is very important for all nonprofits that are out there.
Yes.
It is very important for, you to take heed and to listen to this conversation, because I've never heard it before. And as you've already stated, this is a precedent. It's never been done before.
Yes. So it's important because if they succeed, it could set the precedent for any government agency to create a law that will empower themselves to take over a nonprofit, all of their assets, all of their funds, all of their property, everything.
Wow. Okay. And so that is what has happened as of right now. Even though they have yet to succeed, they have already placed themselves in those roles and have taken over that Impact Charter School.